Faith doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Most of the time, it shows up quietly, in patience we didn't know we had, in obedience that no one applauds, and in waiting that feels longer than it should. I've spent most of my life learning that faith isn't a sprint. It's not even a marathon. It's a long, long game. If you're tired of easy answers, worn out from pretending that you're fine, or learning to trust God without a timeline, you're in the right place. Glad you're here. This is a production of GW Son of a Preacher podcast. Hi, I'm GW. I'm more than happy to have you here today. I hope you enjoy this. Most of us are comfortable with milestones. We celebrate the promotion, we mark the anniversary, we circle the launch date on the calendar. Milestones, they just feel solid. They give us something to point to and say, there, God did that. But faith is not built at the milestones. It's built in between them. It's built in the long stretch of ordinary Tuesdays, in the quiet months when prayers seem to echo, in the seasons where you're not starting something new and you're not arriving anywhere either. You are simply waiting. Waiting tests us more than action ever will. Action always feels powerful. When we act, we feel useful. We feel obedient. We feel like we're partnering with God. There's energy in movement. There's adrenaline in starting. There's satisfaction in doing. But waiting strips all that away. Waiting removes the illusion of control. In action, we can convince ourselves that outcomes are tied to effort. If I work harder, if I pray longer, if I give more, if I push harder, if I push more, surely something will move. But in waiting, we are forced to confront the deeper truth. God is God. We are not. That's an uncomfortable. It always is. Between milestones, there's no applause. We have no measurable progress to brag about. We have no visible proof that anything is happening at all. Yet Scripture reminds us again and again that God often does his deepest work underground. Seed doesn't break the soil the day it's planted. The roots grow in the dark first. Think about the Israelites between Egypt and the Promised Land. The miracle of the Red Sea was a milestone. Crossing into Canaan was a milestone. But the wilderness, that long dry stretch in between, that's where trust was tested. Not by enemies, not by battle, but by daily dependence, manna, one day at a time. Waiting exposes what we really believe. Do we trust God only when the sea is parting? Or do we trust him when the landscape looks the same every morning? When the diagnosis hasn't changed? When the job hasn't come? When the prayer still feels unanswered? Waiting forces us to live without visible evidence. And that's where faith either deepens or it deteriorates. Between milestones, we are tempted to measure God's faithfulness by visible progress. But growth is not always visible. Sometimes it is internal. It's subtle. It's slow. Character is formed in the quiet. Patience is formed in the delay. Humility, well, that's formed in the not knowing. And trust, real trust, is formed when we choose to believe God is working even when we cannot see a single sign of movement. As someone who plays golf, which I do, poorly, I've learned that the most important swings are not always the dramatic ones. It's the steady rhythm between the highlights that determines the score. The patience between the shots, the discipline to stay present in the game, the refusal to unravel after a bad hole. Golf punishes urgency. It does reward steadiness. Faith works much the same way. We love the breathtaking moments, the long putt dropping, the drive finding the fairway far down the way. But most of the round is simply walking and riding, waiting your turn, resetting your focus, trusting the process. Life with God is not a constant highlight reel. It is a long walk between markers. And here is the quiet truth. God often seems more silent right before something shifts, not because he is absent, but because he is shaping us for what is coming next. Waiting tests whether we want God's hand or God himself. Do we trust him only for the milestone, or do we trust him in the middle? The middle is where the motives are purified, where the expectations are adjusted, where our timeline slowly bends toward his. Waiting reveals whether our faith depends on results or relationship. Anyone can praise at the milestone. It takes maturity to praise in the middle. Anyone can declare trust when the breakthrough arrives. It takes depth to whisper, "I still trust you," when nothing appears to be happening. Waiting tests us more than action because it demands patience instead of effort. It asks us to believe without proof, to remain without applause, to stay when we would rather sprint away. But here is the promise hidden in the in-between. God wastes nothing, not the delay, not the silence, not the uncertainty. Between milestones, he is strengthening the roots so that when the next milestone comes, we can stand steady in it. So if you find yourself in a season where nothing dramatic is happening, no fireworks, no headlines, no visible progress, don't assume that God is absent. You may be exactly where faith is being forged. Trust him in the waiting. Sometimes the greatest milestone is not what God does next. It's who you become while you wait. Thank you for joining me today. This work exists to offer quiet, steady reflections for people learning to trust the long game of faith. I am GW. If you'd like to see this in the written word, I have a Substack page at gwsonofapreacher.substack.com. Thanks. This is a production of GW Son of a Preacher. Please hit subscribe or follow.